morning, fellow. Well, what's going on, guys? 5:48 Pacific Standard Time. It's 7:24, 2023. It's Monday, bug spraying day. But how about this one? How would you like your Supreme Court to be overturned? In a day or two, or actually probably today, Israel is going to be facing its most crucial time in its existence, in its government existence anyway, of seeing how a checks and balance system is no longer valid. We ought to be looking at this one very carefully and very scarily. I say that because our current conservative candidates out there who want to change our government around, and they actually have been doing that, they might get the idea that the legislative power is more than what the Supreme Court is. And this is what Israel's judicial reform is happening for this year. They have checks and balances going on. Their appointees in their Supreme Court are president appointed, appointed by other people. But they would have a final say, and they would also have a judicial review, which meaning that we had that happening in Madison. Madison versus Marlborough, the first court case we had, I believe, in the Supreme Court when we started it up. And we had started up a process of judicial review. I may have been exaggerating the first court case, but it's still important to learn about judicial review. Because it also means the Supreme Court can also make law without even realizing it, but it did. When denying certain theoretical constitutional rights because it goes against the spirit or the letter of the law, they're making a change in how things are supposed to be. And we've had too many examples in our own court systems in the United States where judicial review was done and we changed the law of the land. Roe versus Wade's the recent one of them. Give me 1 second here. Losing the Supreme Court in Israel is akin to losing some of the powers we've got in our Constitution, not to mention our own court system as well. We would be losing if that happened to us. The Supreme Court's power for checks and balances and putting more of the power back into the legislative hands that would than what the Constitution would say. Unfortunately, in Israel, the whole there's major population centers are going ape on this one because they're seeing that their traditions and their laws are being overturned somehow, and that elected officials would have more of the power over judicial matters instead of the court systems. They have their own court system, their own court tier leading up to the Supreme Court that would base it on Jewish law, common law, and whatever law proposals they would have. And unfortunately, in their situation, they're going to have a major issue at this point. You know, the court appointed judges that they'd have are nearly the same thing like us. You're going to be retiring or you're going to die in the office. It's basically the same thing we got going on here. Except they got more for a small nation. I'm saying geography, population wise. But still, the court would put a check and balance on the legislative and the executive branches that they have over there. They built their government system is parliamentary. If anybody understands what parliamentary is all about, all right, getting back into certain areas here. But getting rid of the high court, they had the lower courts doing the districts, and they would judge cases accordingly. But if it was a case that mattered the entire court system, if it mattered to the Supreme Court to make a major decision that would change a lot of lives, that is the main reason why they would have it. And unfortunately, Netanyahu wanted more power for the government and the elective because who the hell are these guys in the Supreme Court to overrule us? Well, we have the same situation over here because we had made it that way. They tried to make their legal system similar to ours, but with parliamentary. But we didn't. We have representative democracy at this point over here. And we had presidential uh, nominations for our Supreme Court, and then it took the U.S. Senate to confirm them. It would also take the Senate and the House of Commons to make laws that would govern, if any, of what the judicial system can and can't do. But we still have to have the checks and balances whether or not it's going to be legal or not. But imagine taking away that and just putting the power back into the legislative hands. Lower courts will be able to deal with the legal stuff, but if it happens to deal with the national stage, that's the scary part right there. How is it going to be affecting the greater good? How is it going to be affecting the greater nation at this point over here? How are we going to be able to do this? Getting rid of judicial review, getting rid of the power of the Supreme Court that we have, despite the fact it is, yes, it is conservative. And if there are any laws to be passed, the common, let's see, the House of Representatives and the Senate have to agree on what powers that they may or may not have that would rule the court or not. And it would be up to the President of the United States to sign and authorize it, those kind of changes. It's not done by executive order, and Congress needs the authorization of the executive branch. How our Constitution works. But because there's going to be a law voted in the Knesset at this point of how their laws are going to be changing for everything, it's going to be screwed up, and they're going to have, I don't know how the hell they're going to be able to do this one. How is the rest of the country going to be able to look at these guys and understand what they're trying to do? And quite frankly, I don't even understand what the hell they're trying to do. They had a lot of conflict ever since they started their country over 75 years ago, trying to get along with the Palestinians, and apparently they're still butting heads left and right. They all want Palestinians want their whole entire country back, and they're trying to struggle with the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. That's what they were reduced to. And they're struggling for survival as well. There should have been a two-party system for that little strip. It wasn't set up like that a long time ago. The United Nations had created Israel, managed by Britain until Israel was, actually the area was managed by Britain, until Israel came into existence, I guess. And they've been struggling for their own identities ever since. But how to understand this complex situation? How does this affect us? It affects us. It affects us out here in the States more than what we know of, more than what we can understand. Because examples of that is we're looking at a government that's going through upheavals, much like we're going through upheavals in our own sense. We have conservatives that want control over everything and tell people that the majority doesn't matter anymore than the minority does, and we're losing our sense of what democracy is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be elitism? Is it supposed to be autocracy that we're going through? An autocratic, democratic society, how does that work? You're electing for one party and one rule, that's it? We're doing the Putin situation here. We are. We're doing Putin. Putin's got one party, one rule all, and it's him. But we don't have that here. We have a representative democracy. We have voting to get voted, even different leaders if we don't want them or don't like them, but done by electoral college system. If we done it by popular vote per state, that means each person would be responsible for their own vote. But then again, it's up to each state to determine whether or not you actually are able to going to vote or not. I mean, you've got the right to, but are you going to be able to? Do you have the access to it? Are you gerrymandered into a particular district that's going to be voting more heavily in one particular party or and not the other? Or is it going to be evenly distributed? And if it's not evenly distributed, make sure that one party is going to be ruling more heavily than the others. That's not exactly democracy. But then again, Aristotle did say that democracy was one of the easiest things to corrupt. When you got too much power and corruption going on in your teeth at this point over here, you want more power. And that's what's happening right now. We're dealing with it. We don't want to deal with it, but we're dealing with it. We're dealing with other states are having more and more authoritative control, even bordering on disturbing the federal laws. Interstate commerce is one of those federal situations that is a, is above the state, but the state's still being affected this way. So we're screwed on that one, aren't we? I don't know. It seems like we're really going to be in for it. So I'm going to have to keep on track on the news this morning and see what the hell is going on. I'll let you guys know what the hell's going on.